Now we're moving into the next segment. I think we're close on time here. I'm going to be covering Loop. So I first want to start off with how did I even think about the value of Loop? A lot of that is from the survey that I'm going to have at the end of the session here, where you're going to give feedback around what do you want to see next. We've heard a lot of people are using Copilot. One of the, you think of that, you think of probably the core services of Copilot for M365, which is Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. The new Copilot app was previously M365 Chat, as we're going through a branding change for that, where you can find Copilot on top of chats. You can also find that at Microsoft365.com/chat, where you can experience really the most robust experiences inside of Copilot. But we're rolling it out to other products, such as OneNote and Whiteboard, and now I'm going to be talking about Loop. And many of you might think, well, what is Loop? Is this a new tool? Is this replacing something? I'm sure if you've been at Microsoft quite a while, you know that Loop is another product. It's not replacing anything, but also we want you to experience all the different products that we have out there and really pick the one that works for you. There's many discussions throughout time. I can go back years and years and say, well, yes, we've talked about which tool when. Then we've shifted that and said, okay, what are you trying to achieve? So what's the outcome that you care for? And sometimes that's a combination of different products at Microsoft. Loop is new. It's probably a couple years new. So I will caveat to say it's really not that new. However, it's new for general availability, as we have announced that at Ignite back in November 2023. But I want to give you kind of a historical lesson of what Loop is and what we were thinking about, because you may not have heard it be called Loop. You may have heard it be called Live Components or Fluid Components. So if you are in the Message Center diligently, you've probably seen these names. Or if you were at an Ignite session and you saw things like fluid components and how they're going to change how we collaborate and we generate content. All of that is true. It is the evolution of Microsoft Loop. So I'm going to share with you a couple of our videos that we've had in the past to give you an understanding of where it came from, as we actually first announced it back in 2021. So it's been a couple years. We've really built on it. Then I'm going to go into the core capabilities of what each of those are. The value of it, of course, as Michael said, what's the value of Loop over and above other things? And then how does it really relate to things that we already are using today, such as Microsoft Word or OneNote or Teams? Why would I even use it? And then I'm going to get into what is Loop and Copilot. I think it's important to understand first the initial beginning to set the baseline understanding of where it came from, what is it made up of, how you can use it, the value, and then how we're thinking of AI. And definitely generative AI at work is a huge topic, as we all probably know, and seeing what that looks like inside of Loop and inside of specifically Loop workspaces. So I'm going to cover all that. I'm going to first go into some videos, so hold on, and I'm going to start those up. And I'm going to actually stop sharing and reshare because I did not include my computer sound. I wish there was a button that said, hey, did you mean to include, I see a video that you have coming up, include the computer sound. I'm sure I'm not alone, that we probably all have done that. So let's go ahead and learn about the history. So the history of Loop is really through what we first called fluid components. And here's a quick intro of what that looks like. All of these videos are about 1.5 minutes long. So just hold tight and go ahead and watch. All right, so that was fluid components, and that was all conceptual at the time of how can we bring Loop into some of the spaces inside of M365 and have it really integrate. Here is another video to get into one more part of the history. So at Ignite in November of 2023, we announced the general availability of it. And this is the Loop video that marketing department had created around getting excitement around what is Loop. So let's go ahead and watch that too. So that was a great video. It still didn't really give me a sense of like, well, what is Loop? It looks really cool. However, let's get down to the basics of what it is. So that's a little bit of the history. It's been around. It's been being developed. Surprisingly, and I'm going to walk through it today. Where do you find Loop today? You're going to be surprised because it's actually right under your fingertips throughout every single Teams meeting. So what it is made up of, first off, let me just back up and say Loop is really about a collaborative experience, a next-gen experience in collaboration with your team. And you'd think, well, yeah, but I can use Team for that, or I can use OneNote for that, or I can use Word document for that. I can use all these things. SharePoint is for that, right? It's Teams collaboration. However, Loop does some things that are different than all of those, and it's important to distinct. And that goes a little bit back to when I mentioned, well, the which tool when. It's not necessarily which tool, it's what are you trying to accomplish? And so Microsoft Loop is really three things. It is components, workspaces, and pages. And the best way to really see that is I'm going to walk you through what each of them look like. Now, we first rolled out components. I know when we marketed it probably a couple of years ago, we talked about all these things. We weren't quite there yet. We definitely are now. But Loop components are these live connected experiences that you can see when you're creating a Teams chat or when you're in Outlook. They're on the ribbon. If you have it enabled for your organization, you're going to see Loop, and you're going to be able to do a drop down and bring in a Loop component. Now, we're taking the best of what we created in fluid components or live components, whatever you might have referred or understood them to be. We've updated them and we brought them forward in this collaborative experience. So I like to kind of think of them as they're really units of productivity that help you collaborate to get your work done. So a good example, and this is really all around like use cases. How would you use it? Say you're in maybe a chat with your team, right? Maybe you have a team, a group chat with your team, and you need to do a poll about something like, hey, we're going to have this team offsite. Where would you guys like to go? You can bring in a poll really easily in that experience. And yes, I know at Microsoft, you might be saying, well, yeah, but you have forms and forms can do polls, or you could do a SharePoint list. We're giving you all the options. This is not we're only going to move to Loop and we're not going to use anything else, but there's a lot of use cases for Loop. So the easiest one is, I think, bringing in Loop, as you can see here. Perhaps you're Also creating a list of speakers. Maybe you're running an event like we are here at Minnesota M365 User Group, and we need to know, okay, who are the speakers? Who are the keynotes? And I want my entire board to be a part of this, and they can edit and they can be iterative on this. We also, it's like bringing a Microsoft list, but in a component. And when I say component, what that truly means is that no matter what application in M365 you're working on that has Loop components, you are in there in a live experience. And it may be hard for you to conceptualize. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to show you. So don't worry. But you're going to be able to see this as, and I explain it like I created a Word document and I shared it with my colleague, and then they can go in and we can co-create, right? We've been doing this a long time in our applications. Now, what if it's just a segment, right? Just a small component of that Word document that I want them to have access to? Or what if I need those 5 people in this component and these 5 people in this other section of my Word document? I can go ahead, I can create the component in our group chat inside of Teams. I can then paste it into my Word document so they can either edit it in Teams or edit it in Word. And then I could also create another component of that Word document. So think of it like a paragraph, but it can do, and I have a list, it can be a poll, it can be many things. Now I go into Outlook and I paste that component in there and I send it off to somebody and they can make the change there. No matter where you're editing, that component stays in the flow and it's all being real-time updated. So you might be wondering, well, what the heck is a file format? The file format actually is a dot loop. And so if you've ever created these, they are located in your OneDrive. If you are the originator, much like when you create a Word document, they're located in your OneDrive. And when you share them out, it uses a different permission model. And I'll get into the admin stuff for all of you admins out there going, what, where, what? You're not using M365 groups. You're not using SharePoint permissions. No, it's got a whole nother permission model. So I'll dive into that later. But it is located in your OneDrive. And that's really what I want you to first understand about components. They do stay in sync and they're connected to the different applications that we've brought Loop into. The second thing, so now you hopefully get a little bit of an understanding of Loop components. I'm going to then talk to you about workspaces and pages. Now, that's a lot different, right? A component is something I can move and I can put it in different locations. I can have it in one group chat and then maybe add it to another Teams chat, which then adds that person that's in that Teams chat. We can all co-contribute to whatever that Loop component is. But now I may actually want to create a workspace. And what is really contained in a workspace is it's one shared space for whomever I want to invite that can either edit the workspace, edit a page, or just edit a component. So it's extremely fluid, hence the name Fluid Components or Fluid Loop. The evolution is that it has a really flexible way that you can collaborate. It's incredibly simple. It pulls in content from absolutely anywhere. I'm going to give you a demo of it. I actually created one while we were in the meeting earlier and Don was giving those Message Center updates. And I thought, well, I probably should show you what a Loop workspace is in real time in conjunction with what the topic is for our February event. So I'm going to show you that. But not only am I pulling in other content, it can be really from anywhere. So it's a link, it can be a file, it can be a video, it can be really any link that you want to put together to accomplish your goal, whatever that particular workspace is geared for. And then, of course, you can stay on top of what everyone is doing because you can see real time when people are editing, when people are in your workbook, and so forth. It looks like Neil, you might have a question. Neil, do you want to go ahead and come off mute?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Thank you. I was just looking at that first Loop workspaces. It gives you the power and flexibility to bring every important, looks like missing a word there or something.
It's possible. I haven't looked fully every important piece to your project together in one shared space. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. All right. So I'm going to give you a demo of what Workspaces is, but I like to explain it like OneNote because that's probably how we can easily kind of understand a workspace. Usually when you create a OneNote notebook, it could be a team notebook, right? That's created first from SharePoint, or it could be your personal OneNote, which I have and I live in a day in and day out. But let's say I want to have one section or one page that I want to share with someone. Guess what? You can't do that in OneNote. The OneNote notebook is either shared or it's not shared. So it can't get granular in permission. And the reason being is that it is using the group permission model, the M365 group permission model, where you can either edit or you can't edit. Maybe you can view depending on, I guess, how granular you set your permission model, but it's for the entire notebook. Now, what Workspaces allows me to do is I can create a workspace, but then I'm going to create a page and I'm only going to allow certain people to see that. So it really allows me to be a lot more flexible when I'm doing some of this co-creation, because much like Teams, it's kind of the concept of shared channels and private channels. I want to have a subset of permissions. Loop very much works in that same way. It's a collaborative space. It makes it easier for everyone to be a little more contained, to be able to work together, to react together, track progress, and so forth. So I'll show you an example of a workspace. Next, within a workspace is what we have is called pages. Now you can add links to anything you want, but you can also create a page. Much like you can a OneNote page, this brings other things like components, links and so forth into one project on one page. So the pages really give you this flexible canvas where you can organize your components, pull in other things. They're really optimized for thinking about together and getting work done. They can really start small, or you can build them out really large. You can expand a loop component to a loop page, but you can still focus on the content. So I guess you could probably align this to your SharePoint site, and then here are the sub sites, or your SharePoint document library, and here are other pages or documents within the library. So think about it like that. I very much think about it as like, all right, I've got a workspace. Maybe I call it a project, and then here are all my artifacts for that project. And then this group gets this individual set of permissions. This group gets this individual set of permissions. I only want this one person to actually work on this particular survey, which is the pull of a component. So it really expands. I'm going to now give you what really is Loop. Because I'm sure everything that you're hearing right now is like, okay, I think I understand, but let me get into the next video that really, I think, touches on exactly what you can do, and I think even also answer some of the value questions that you might have.
Say goodbye to the frustration of jumping between apps and losing track of documents and ideas. Microsoft Loop transforms the way you work, so you can think, plan, and create together like never before. Loop is made up of workspaces, pages, and components. Let's break it down. Create together with shared workspaces for each of your projects. On the Loop homepage, you can access all your existing workspaces and create new ones. In a Loop workspace, you can bring everything you need for your project together in one place. To kick off a workspace, Loop can even do the searching for you, making it easy to add existing project-related information and organize it into pages. Continue adding to your workspace as your project evolves and organize it the way you want. Loop pages are flexible canvases where you can react, comment, and build on each other's ideas. Notifications help you track the things you care about and focus on what matters, all while staying in the flow of your work. Copilot in Loop helps you ideate and co-create. Get inspired with AI-powered contextual suggestions to transform the way you create together. Don't let app barriers slow your project down. Easily share information with people outside your workspace with Loop components. Components are portable pieces of content that stay in sync across all the places they have been shared, no matter where they are updated. You can share components and create new ones, like lists, tables, paragraphs, and more, across your favorite Microsoft 365 apps. You're always in control because it's easy to see where components were shared and who has access. However you work, wherever you work, Loop enables teams to think, plan, and create together like never before.
All right, hopefully that gave you a really good sense of how people are using Loop, really addressing some of that context switching that I know that we all have to do every single day. I'm in Outlook, and then I'm in Word, and then I'm in Teams, and I live in Teams. But then I have to go out to this and that, and it's bringing it all in one location. That I think is one of the use cases or value adds. But let's talk a little bit about what are those Loop uses and those audiences. We are trying to address everywhere we can at Microsoft, really around improving collaboration and understanding that in really the flow of the way you work. So Loop really helps with bringing everyone together, enabling that free flow of ideas, collaborating in a natural and human-centered way. And then, of course, if you're physically dispersed, and especially geographically dispersed, you can get caught up. A good use case I'll share with you is that I am on a global team. I am in the Americas region. However, my counterparts in EMEA and APAC, we all developed a workspace to work on Copilot together as we were delivering all the capabilities. And the only way I could keep track of what is the latest deck I can use, where are all the resources, who is on what team, who is what customer, was through using Loop. That was the central location. Now, of course, that Loop workspace was a link in our team. However, that got me exactly out to where I needed to find everything. And I favorited it. And to this day, months and months later, I still go back to it and go, oh, okay, yep, that's the right deck, or that's the right thing, or this is the right resource, or this is the best place for this. So that, when I think of physically dispersed, regionally dispersed is my experience. And it's been great because we have so many talented people like you do across your teams geographically. It's great to get back to that one center, or what I would call source of truth for all that information, including everyone. No matter where, and I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like. I wish I had a little more preparation to pull in some of my board members to help show the value of connecting and syncing on the data real time so you can see multiple people in it. But hopefully you can just use your imagination today when I go through demo. And then keeping everyone together, because everyone would then get notified, and you can mention them, and then they would get notified. This person updated this Loop component, or they assigned this item for you. But no matter where you're working, whether I know that now it's in Teams, which early I referenced that you probably don't know, but it is definitely underneath your nose every day. Those are Teams meetings. I'll show you what that looks like, as well as in Outlook. So on the ribbon, you've got your Loop components. Also in Microsoft Word, we have that located on the ribbon, and so forth. But how are the Loop components used today? And this goes into why would I create it? Why would I use it? Simply, it's another added tool for you. But I think it has a lot of flexibility, and a lot more flexibility in some of the products that we have out there. And frankly, it's actually really fun to use. I know a lot of our Teams engineering groups at Microsoft today are using them almost like workspaces is what they live by, which is really interesting to see the shift. But here are some of the use cases: really co-creating a checklist or an activities or action items list, running a checklist, or really managing a project, which I know at this user group, we talk about project management, task management. Yes, I know we have Project Online. I know that we also have Planner. We also have To Do. There's so many things out there. But Loop helps in this space around having a checklist or a project template, if you will. Sharing data or information is so much easier because not only can you share an entire workspace, but maybe just one page of it or just a component. I just need your input right here. So that's really great. Doing informal drafts, being able to collaborate on drafts, much like you can in Word, you can do in Loop, and you can do in Loop with Copilot. Meeting agendas, meeting notes. Is anybody ringing a bell as to where I'm going with the meeting agenda, meeting notes, action items? I'm going to show you that in a second. Collaborating on text, certainly collaborating for shared presentations or your own, and then any sign up sheets. So these are just some use cases that I know that we're exploring, that we see that our customers are using today. So whether it's just a quick one-on-one with a peer, now and just show you what Loop is when I'm referring to Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to share a little bit about what we see in meeting information or meeting inside of a Teams meeting. There's some capabilities that you might not be aware of that we have that is around managing your meeting to begin with. So for instance, let me go and show you notes. So if you ever see that tab inside of a Teams meeting and it's called notes, I'm going to show you here. So you can see it's this tab called notes and I can just start typing. Now what's happening is it's creating a loop components for this particular meeting. Automatically it gets a template. It's called agenda. Then you've got meeting notes and then you've got follow-up tasks. And that automatically, because I clicked on it and I'm also the organizer of the meeting, will most likely be stored in my OneDrive. You're also going to see this little ticker here. That's all about sensitivity labels. So for instance, if I had a highly classified, it's adhering to the sensitivity labels that we have out there throughout all of our Microsoft 365 applications. So this is Loop. So if you didn't know it, you actually already have access to it. You just may not have known in the notes section that you can start using that today. So I wanted to give you a little snippet of what my demo is going to show, or at least where you can see it. But what is it used for? I think it's also good to understand some of the great business value. Some of that is around collaborating in a small group on a project and really building off of each other's ideas. I mentioned earlier that I've used it in a team offsite. I was just in California a couple of weeks ago. I've got about 13, 14 people on my team, and we were trying to plan all the events, and we used Loop to do that. So, okay, everyone put in your ideas, and we're going to vote. What are the things that you want to do while you're out there as a team? What kind of team building event do you want to do? A cooking class, a hike, whatever, and have everybody go ahead and put that your ideas in, and then you vote it out. And when we got there, the manager said, okay, these are the two highest things, and those were the things that we did. So that's one use case. Keeping track of deliverables. So going back to like real project management, you can use this as project templates, much like Teams, much like PowerPoint, much like Office. We've had Office themes, we've had PowerPoint templates, we've had Teams templates. Loop has the same concept as well, which are templates that get you started. So when I said keep track of deliverables, and it can be used for project management, there is a project template in there that's pretty fantastic. And then, of course, working across all the different time zones, it's a living, breathing document, if you will. And if you have a lot of people who have access, then they can go into that pretty quickly and get up to date on what is the latest and greatest. And then you can use it in multiple apps. And that's probably the differentiator when you're thinking about what is Loop versus OneNote versus Word versus this other thing. you can put these components inside of Outlook. You can put them in Word, you can put them in Teams, and they're living and breathing, meaning you can update them. There is no close, there is no save. I can go to something from a month ago, I can edit it, and it will still be real time to that one location where it was. And then, of course, if there's a copy of that component in an email, in their send file, people can go ahead and still keep on continuing to work on that. Because we tend to think that our send email is like done, it's stale, it's gone. A component is always live. You can always go back in there. And even if somebody's editing it in real time, you can watch them edit that. So that's the use cases. I'm going to quickly cover admin. I'll put the links all in here, but I want to get into demo because I think that's really where the meat of it is. But we're going to go ahead and get into admin because that's many of you on the call. That's my career history as well as, wait, how do I manage this? How do I make sure that my end users are using it securely? As you saw in my real life scenario in our meeting today, when I clicked on notes, you saw the capabilities for Loop to come into notes. But what if you want to disable that? Or what if you want to put some configuration or put a sensitivity label on that called highly confidential? You saw there that sensitivity labels are a part of Loop, which is a huge portion. But where is it stored and how do you govern? Because that's probably one of my favorite topics here at Microsoft is governing all things in M365. Now, where Loop content is stored really impacts how the admin can manage, govern, and really help with the data lifecycle and compliance that are available inside of Loop. It's built on top of SharePoint, OneDrive, and SharePoint Embedded. And if you're interested and don't even know what SharePoint Embedded is, put that in your survey results and we'll find somebody to come in and talk to you all day long about SharePoint Embedded. I'm sure somebody on the call could probably give a sneak peek. But that means most of these capabilities work across existing files in your ecosystem that you are already governing today. You may not know, but you've already been governing Loop. So if you can see here, wherever you first create the Loop is where the governance will occur. So for instance, if I create it in a meeting, we know that all my meeting components, right? My recordings, my loops that I've created, my file attachments that are shared, they are in my OneDrive. Me as the organizer of the meeting. That's also where your Loop components are located. If I, for instance, am in a channel meeting and a Loop component gets created, you can see that's then living in SharePoint. And then, of course, in the Loop app, that's in SharePoint Embedded. So these are the locations. Wherever you start the Loop may change where it's stored. Now, Loop sharing. I know that that's hard to swallow because what do we know? SharePoint permission models and M365 group permissions. We know those for sure. We know security groups in Azure AD, we know distribution groups, we know all those sort of security sections inside and across M365. This is a little bit different. So Loop sharing, Loop's workspaces have a roster that govern access. Sharing a workspace adds that user to the roster. So it's a roster. Loop pages, pages are shared. And they're configured in OneDrive. So that's really like a permitting somebody to see a Word document in OneDrive. You have complete control over that. And then Loop component, that really defaults to your organization's existing permissions. So, but of course, permissions, like anything, they can be modified before sending. I know that's a lot. I'm going to put links in here to make sure you all clearly understand. If you are admins of M365, it probably is no surprise, but you're also an admin of Loop. So get acquainted, especially if you have it enabled in your environment, you're going to want to learn a little bit about that. So where are we at with Loop today before I hit the last and I believe final slide before I go into demo? Right now it's available in Teams chat on desktop and mobile. It's available in Outlook, again, desktop and web. It's available in Whiteboard, copy and pasting the components into it. It has task integration. What I mean by that is if I @mention someone, they're going to get notified in the activity feed, and also I believe in email. And then Teams collaborative notes, which I showed you when you're in a Teams meeting. You click on notes, and now you see you've got the meeting agenda and so forth. It's in that location. In preview or is recently rolled out, it's going to be Copilot, which we know that recently rolled out. Word for the web, I'm seeing that now, so some of you may see that. Soon we're going to have third-party integration. You also saw sensitivity labels, DLP is also a part of Loop. So those are where all the components are in. With that, I'm going to move into Loop demo. Before I do that, I'm going to set myself up for the demo. Are there any questions or have they all been addressed maybe in the chat if one of the board members could let me know?
Yeah, Nick Stilling is doing a very good job trying to catch
Great.
everything. I'm jumping in there as well. So good job, Nick. Thank you.
Awesome.
There was one that Jason was asking about. Have you heard anything about Loop being able to add it to a SharePoint page?
Great question. I haven't seen it in the roadmap, but again, everybody knows roadmap.microsoft.com, and go ahead and take a look and see if it's in there. I haven't.
All right.
All right. Great.
I think
Thank you
most
so
everything
much.
else is taken
I'll
care
keep
of.
triaging as you go too. So keep
Appreciate it, Nick. I love it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support. All right. Now I want to get into demo. And this is kind of interesting because I did this pretty quickly, but I also asked Copilot to help me out. And I use Copilot a lot in my day-to-day work world, actually, and personal world. And I asked Copilot to create an outline for a 1-hour presentation on Microsoft Loop and Copilot. And this is what it created for me. So you can see here, this is what I just did. And it said, okay, here's an introduction, a brief overview, right? I gave the history. What is Microsoft Loop? The key features and components. We've learned now it's components, it's workspaces with pages. I provided some use cases and some real world examples that I've developed or that I've personally experienced. And then what is Copilot? So I guess I can talk on that. So I'm just going to stay in line with the outline that Copilot provided me, which is great. I'll show you how I did that. What is Copilot? Copilot for M365 is a combination of leveraging large language models, connecting that to your data, which is the graph, and embedding that into our M365 products. That's kind of it in a nutshell, along with using natural language to ask Copilot to do something for me. Capabilities and functions, integration of Loop and Copilot, conclusion. Okay, I think it's a pretty good outline. Now, I have a great personal example. I don't know if Max is on this call, but Max and I last year had to go out to Seattle, and we were delivering a presentation on Microsoft 365 administration. And it's a 3-hour workshop that we were delivering. We asked Copilot to help put together an outline. And it was pretty incredible because we kind of started, when you get that start from blank and you're like, I'm not sure, where do we start? How do we do this? Copilot helped us do that inside of Loop. Along with that, we were able then to create the entire project of the presentation we were working on in a Loop workspace. I'm going to start from scratch. I want to go and just show you what does Loop look like if I'm just going out. So here, how to get there is loop.microsoft.com. Now it has to be enabled inside of your environment. If not, then you want to talk to your admin if any of you out there would like to do this. I already am going to see the workspaces I've already created. I can also see maybe recent components that I've created in pages or even ideas. But I want to go back and I want to first show you creating a workspace. Here, I'm going to go ahead and click on workspace. I can go ahead and create anything. So in this regard, I'm just going to say Minnesota M365 User Group. And maybe I'm going to use an icon. It just helps me. I think you can do that in Teams. When you name a team or a channel, you can go ahead and put in an icon as a prefix in case you didn't know that. That's super fun. I'm going to put a smiley face with stars for eyes. And I can also update my cover, right? So some fun things that I can do. I might want to use this slide here. So a bunch of comments, and I can start to invite new members. I don't want to invite anyone. Well, you know what? I do, because I'm going to put Don and Nick on the spot. And if you join and play with me, that's cool. If not, I understand. So I can start writing Don, and it will automatically go, okay, that's Donald Dene. And then it knows this because these are the people that I work with quite a bit. And they're my colleagues here at Microsoft. So it's going to look at your Azure Active Directory service and pulling the with relations with. Of course, you can just simply type their name as well. And then I want to maybe add more details with keywords. I'm going to say prep for loop. And I'm going to go ahead, much like the video showed, you're going to pretty much see exactly what happened. AI looked at my title, looked at what I've been working in, and it started to develop this list of things that might be relational to my title based on that. So it knows that I have created user group. I have a lot of user group introduction files because we've been running this for years and years. Maybe an ultimate guide for administrating, whatever the case. I can then go ahead, choose it, and have it added. In this regard, I'm just going to say create workspace. Now, what you get is an entitled workspace or an entitled page. I already created the workspace, so now I need to add pages or links to fulfill it. Much like with Office themes and with PowerPoint templates that you create, maybe even Teams, you have Teams templates that are for certain things. You can start from one of those templates or simply start from scratch. I can go into the template gallery, and remember earlier I mentioned you can I'll show you just one template to just give you an idea what that could look like. So for instance, maybe you want to start a new project. I can go in here and I can say loop demo is my project, and I can put in the definition in here. You can see the status is not started. So it almost looks like it's bringing in things like Microsoft new capability as well if I assign. So I might say the role is support for presentation. Not faux. I don't really want any faux per se. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to assign that to Donald. And maybe I'll say answer chat. I'm going to assign with Nick. And then they're going to get notified that they've been assigned something. I can see here, Nick and Donald are both in here. I can then do background context, so explain the information your team needs to know. I can also do different things. So there's a lot. This is just a template. So just use your imagination. There's multiple. If you click on template gallery, it's going to just explode with ideas that you can get going with. I'm going to go down here. What are my goals? What are some of my milestones? So very much like a project template. This helps me out. So here's a loop demo. I'm going to show you how I got here. Maybe not opportunity statement. I might say outline. So I can just really use this any way I want. And it looks like Nick is up here. If we have trouble, there is a click through. Anyone can try. Thanks, Nick. And I'm going to bring in Copilot. So how do I bring in Copilot? There's a couple ways. I can just go ahead, bring in Copilot by using a /. So if you're new to Copilot, whether you're in Outlook, you're in Word, you're in Copilot inside of Teams, / brings up the idea or the ability for you to begin interacting with Copilot. It also is used in Context IQ. So if you're not familiar with Context IQ, that is that capability that it knows what were the latest files, people, meetings, emails that you have received. So in context, right, Context IQ, it will then be able to give you that information quickly. I'm going to say draft page content. And as I'm using Copilot, looks like I already misspelled. I'm going to ask Copilot to create an outline, right? Because I'm preparing this demo presentation for the user group. So create an outline for 1 hour of Microsoft Loop and Copilot. And I don't want to click on any of these buttons, right? Because this is like my, in a sense, prompt suggestions. I want to go all the way over here and I want to send it off to Copilot, have it go through the grounding process, have it go through the large language model, have it go through the things that I have access to, and I want it to spit out a really good outline on using Loop and Copilot in my demonstration. So as you can see, it's working on it. So this, as you can see, is a really great, robust way to have that next-gen collaboration. All right, so here it gave me an idea, introduction, how Loop and Copilot work together. So it's pretty good. I thought it was pretty fantastic. Now, I can also say, you know what, I want to maybe rewrite this. And I'm going to say, see, maybe I want to say add additional items to include components of Loop. So I can always with Copilot, you can regenerate over and over again new versions of what you're trying to achieve. So you're not just stuck on one. You can actually go through multiple versions and pick the one that really suits you best. So it's working on it. All right, so now you can see I've got another version of it here. First one was create the outline. The second one is add additional items. So if I go and look at additional items, then I'll go ahead and I'll see components. So that is some of the interaction that you can have with Copilot inside of Loop. But let me show you some of the experiences. So now I've got Nick and Don that was so gracious to be in here. I want to walk you through, we've created a workspace, we've created a page. Now let's make this more robust. So Nick, Don, feel free to start adding because we are all co-collaborating here. I'm going to create a new link and maybe I'm going to create a link for, let me see what I've got in my history. Should be several things here. So here's Microsoft Loop. And automatically, when I put in a link to the address, it will go ahead and use the website title of that page, which is pretty good here, Microsoft Loop. I'll add it. So now you're going to start to see more pages being added. And you can see that this is a shortcut, if you will. So it's almost like a mini, project space of all the relevant artifacts for that project. This is our user group. I just saw that Nick said, Don, we need to ensure we have Michelle's preferred brand of bottled water for the demo. Any water will do. Not well water, though. I think I might have a touch of a problem with that. Okay, so this is how you then would just create and keep on creating pages and links within this workspace. Nick, make sure to have only one green M&M. That's, yeah. This is awesome. So you can see real time how valuable this is. But you know what? I think I want to make this a component. So I'm going to create a loop component here. And I'm going to mess with everyone. So now that I've created that loop component, there we go. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paste this. So there's a couple of things. So I can see all the shared locations. There aren't any because I haven't done anything. I also can copy this component, which is what I'm going to do as my example. I'm going to bring that into Outlook. And I'm going to show you in Outlook how you can get going. So whether you are in the mobile version or you're in Classic or you're in New, it's pretty irrelevant for Loop. I am in now my own personal email at work, and I'm gonna click on New Email, and I'm going to show you what it's like to bring in a Loop component. There we go. Let me blow that out, all up for you. And what you're going to see in the insert area inside of this, let me get into this area. You're going to see now loop component on the ribbon. So you're going to see this also in Word. I can click here. I can start any number of loop components. Remember when I create it, it's sitting in my OneDrive. But because I did copy one, I'm going to go ahead and paste it. So I'm pasting that in here. Now, because I gave access to the workspace to both Don and Nick, whatever they do here, they're already here. They're not in my email, but they're in the component. So seeing the value of that immediately, they can see what I'm writing. So I'm going to say, this is for demo, maybe demonstration. And I can go ahead, I don't even need to send it to them, but I can see them in real time, edit anything on this particular component. So I'm going to ask those guys, go ahead and if you are in the loop page itself, you can start adding anything to it. Now I'm going to see if I can't make this small so you can also see. So you've got my email. And let me go ahead and close this out. So now you've got real time. So I'm just showing you, when I think about the value, I think about this ability that not only am I in email, I'm also in my loop workspace. So I'm just going to put that side by side. Hopefully you can see that clearly. If I can blow it up well. All right, so I am in my email, you guys. I have not sent this to anyone. I just dropped in the loop component, and it looks like either Nick or Don is in here, and they're saying, don't forget to include ... And that was by Don. And now Nick's going in there. So I'm going to go in here. Now, I haven't even sent this to him, which is crazy. I also can send it to somebody else. That then gives them access to this loop component, and then they can start iterating on it. But where does it really live? Ultimately, it actually lives right here in the workspace. So as you can see here, what he typed in here automatically comes over in here. The same is true for Word. The same is true for Teams. So I'm going to bring up, because I know we don't have a lot of time left, I'm going to bring up Teams. And I'm going to go ahead. Let me see. There's a way that I can go ahead and bring in Teams while I'm trying to do this. So real time, I've got my hands up, you guys. Nick is getting ready. Michelle is coming out in blue sparkly suit. I'll have to try to find that somewhere in my wardrobe. I'm sure my kid probably has some sparkle glue. So I'll work on that. All right, maybe I'm just going to go out to the ribbon so you can see what it looks like in another space. So let me hold tight. I'll let you guys just keep watching this real-time information in an email that I haven't even sent. And I want to show you it in Teams because I think that adds a lot of value as well. So no matter, again, it kind of goes back, I think, to no matter what the location. Some people live in Outlook, some people live in Teams, some people live in Loop Workspace. Some people live in Word. No matter where you are, these components are really helpful. And again, you can share a workspace. You can share just one page in your workspace, or you can share this component. So if I were to give permission of this component to someone else, then they would have access, but they would not have access to the original workspace, which is really powerful. All right, there's probably some best practice here in not allowing your peers live access to your shared screen. Yeah, there probably is. So all of you presenters out there, or anyone who might have some trust issues with your colleagues, don't share live screen. I think you're probably pretty correct on that. But I want to give you just one more example. I love demo buddies, but they're scary. on the Teams chat. So I'm just loading it up on my other screen while I'm letting that load. It looks like Nick and Don are having fun. So now I'm going to create a new chat, and as they're screwing around, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just ping Don. I might be trying to do many things at once. So let's just see if I can get the picker up. All right, bear with me. Bear with me. I'm almost there. Oh, of course, right when I move it to my screen, it all comes up. Okay, so now I've got Don in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste that component. Now, here, let me give you an intro of components inside of Teams. Let me get rid of some of the real stuff here. And got it. Yep, got it. Okay, here we are. So how I add a component is I can go ahead and click on the plus sign, and I can go ahead and say collaborate with Loop. Now, I could do that, and that will then bring me up. What do I want to do? I may want to create a bulleted list. I may want a Kanban board or Kanban, a progress tracker, maybe a Q&A, a voting table, which is the example I used earlier. But in this, I just want to paste my Loop component. And just by clicking on Control V, I'm now bringing in that component. You can see here, there's been a lot of messing around. I haven't even hit send yet. It's a live component. So whether I am in email, I am in Teams, I am back in my Loop workspace, you can see this real-time interactivity of using Loop. And it's not multiple copies, which is great. There's only one central location. There's only one central storage. However, they are in all these areas. I can even edit the Loop component when it's sitting in my sent file, which is also really interesting. So Nick is saying, be careful, real time within both Teams, within my email. Of course, I could open up Word for that demo as well. Or I can see it right here. A career low light is writing a sentence as a group. Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you guys. I'm going to let Nick, Don drop off, and I'm going to show you actually what I created for the presentation today. All right, so I created a workspace. I then asked Copilot to create an outline for me of a 1-hour presentation on Loop. I had already created it, but I wanted to just make sure I was following what Copilot suggested as a really good example. Now, when you're interacting with Copilot, there are multiple ways that you can use it, and think of it about being creative. So the experience is really bringing in Copilot is asking it to do things like write something for you, create a blog post on this topic. It gives you that first draft so you can then go ahead and get started. It can also do several other things. So if I just showing you one more time the example of Copilot, I'm going to go ahead and use my /. I'm going to draft the page content. I can also go in and say, you know what, I want a blueprint of this, or brainstorm with me on this. Maybe strategies to attract new customers using social media. Any of you in the web space that are looking to improve your social media, you can ask Copilot, right? There are so many things that you can do with Copilot. We won't even have enough time to cover it all, but just think of Copilot is now integrated inside of Microsoft Loop to make that co-creation and collaboration that you're already doing with your team that much more powerful. So now, not only can, if I invited Nick and Don to this personal workspace, they could then ask Copilot something else. So we can co-create inside of Copilot. And as you can see here, it gives me the top 10 things. I can keep going. I can revise whatever I need to do. But not only that, so I asked Copilot to create me the outline. Then I went ahead and I linked to the user group. I linked to my Loop presentation. And then, of course, I know many of you are going to say, well, what was the Loop blog post around general availability? So I added in that link. Also, everything you need to know about Copilot is in a YouTube video that we just rolled out. I also have managing loops. So all you admins out there, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all the links that I've created inside of my loop workspace. I'm going to bring it to you inside of the Teams meeting here. I'm going to end with a huge thank you for taking time in enduring the journey of Microsoft Loop. If you haven't checked it out, please do. I think there's a lot of fun things that you can get going on and starting.
Show how it gives you a central place to bring people together to create real.
I think you might be mute.
I think there we go. I unmuted myself. Thanks everyone. And Chris, are you all ready and geared up for Intune?
I am. How's it going? How are you today, Michelle?
I'm good. I'm all, talking about Loop.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but this is definitely an awesome way to really look underneath the covers as to what it can do for our community. And so I'll have to dig into a little bit more and maybe even stop using OneNote so much.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny, Chris, because people have asked me, well, I love OneNote. I'm like, well, so do I. However, I can't share the things that I love to share. I'll always probably still use OneNote. But now that I know that Teams Meetings is using notes that are Loop components, that just kind of changes the game for me. And I need to really hone in on, well, what is Loop and how can I use it and better get, become more comfortable with it, especially around, collaborating on a project with a team, which I'm developing and starting to do a whole lot more and bringing that into my kind of rhythm. But it's exciting. There's some fun stuff.
Yeah, it definitely does more for that co-authoring experience than OneNote does. OneNote's a little, you can step on each other's toes very easily. Not so much with Loop.
No, not at all. All right, thank you. Turn it over to you. Thanks, everyone.